Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to cut through the noise, get you truly well informed, and do it quickly and hopefully engagingly.
That's the plan.
Today we're heading back, way back actually, to an era that arguably more than any other really laid the groundwork for our modern world. It was a time of incredible innovation, yes, but also profound social change and, well, quite a few paradoxes when you look closely.
Definitely paradoxical.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep into the Victorian age. We've pulled together a pretty hefty stack of sources for you. We've got the historical context, key political reforms, the art scene, architecture, fashion, even interior design and furniture. It's a lot.
It is a lot, but it all connects.
Exactly. And our mission, as always, is to sift through all this, pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge, the key insights, and give you that shortcut to understanding a period whose influence, well, it's still very much around us.
What's truly fascinating here, I think, isn't just the sheer range of topics, but how deeply they're all interconnected. The Victorian era wasn't just a chapter in a history book. It was this colossal engine of transformation. It laid down the foundations for so much of what we recognize today.
Right.
Understanding this period isn't just about dates and names. It's about seeing the roots of our industries, how our social structures evolved, the very fabric of our culture and art. Even how we think about things like class and gender.
Its legacy is huge.
Undeniable.
Yeah.
And we're going to explore exactly why this one monarch's reign had such a monumental, far-reaching impact.
Oh.
The reign and the era, a foundation of change.
Okay, so let's start right at the core. Queen Victoria herself. Her reign officially kicks off June 20, 1837, and she's on the throne until January 22, 1901. Just pause for a second and think about that length of time.
It's staggering.
Over 6 decades. Chronologically, this follows the Georgian era, the 4 Georges, and it comes just before the Edwardian period. Though, like with most historical dividing lines, there's a bit of overlap, a bleed-through of influence, especially in the later years.
Sure, transitions aren't usually clean cuts.
And here's a fact that really underscores how unique her time was. Queen Victoria's reign, 63 years and 7 months, was longer than any British monarch who came before her.
Unprecedented duration.
It wasn't just long, it was record-breaking for its time.
Right.
Now, her official title, it really reflected the growing muscle of the empire she presided over. She was, of course, Queen of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland.
Standard enough.
But then, significantly, May 1st, 1876, she adds this grand additional title, Empress of India.
And that's huge, not just ceremonial.
Not at all. It was a powerful symbol of Britain's expanding global power, its imperial dominance reaching its peak. It formalized the relationship with India, often called the jewel in the crown.
A very loaded term, but yes, central to the imperial image.
As for her background, Victoria-born Alexandrina Victoria was the only daughter of Prince Edward, Duke of Kent and Strathearn. He was the 4th son of King George III.
So not initially the direct heir.
No, but circumstances put her there. And her marriage, of course, was hugely important. To her first cousin, Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha.
A very influential partnership.
Immensely, not just personally, but for the public image of the monarchy. So you've got this young woman taking the throne, holding it for over 60 years, and overseeing this absolutely unprecedented period of change, both at home and across the globe.
And that longevity you mentioned is absolutely critical. We can't overstate it.
Right.
Having one stable monarch at the helm for over 63 years, it provided this unparalleled foundation, consistent policy, sustained development, a continuous sense of national identity being built.
No constant chopping and changing at the top.
Exactly. Not a fragmented era with short reigns or royal turmoil. That consistency allowed for immense, rapid change across almost every area of life to really take root and solidify. We're talking about a period, relatively speaking, of peace among the major European powers, largely thanks to the Congress of Vienna back in 1815, which sort of kept a lid on major wars for decades.
Okay, so external stability, too.
Yes, and that external stability, combined with the internal royal continuity, allowed for this incredible surge in economic prosperity within the UK. And within that environment, Britain went through these truly profound shifts. An explosion in industry.
The Industrial Revolution in full swing.
Full swing. A dynamic evolution of cultural norms, radical political reforms changing who could vote and how the country was governed, groundbreaking scientific discoveries challenging basic belief.
Like Darwin.
Like Darwin, precisely. And significant military advancements that, well, underpin that imperial expansion.
Which brings us back to Empress of India.
Exactly. That internal stability directly fueled the massive, relentless expansion of the British Empire. Victoria taking that title in 1876 wasn't just symbolic. It signaled the absolute apex of British imperial power and its self-image as the global leader. This empire wasn't just about grabbing land. It was about resources, new markets, extending political and cultural influence on a scale the world hadn't really seen before.
It makes you wonder, though.
What's that?
How did such a long, stable reign, which sounds like it should mean continuity, actually become the very engine for such massive, sometimes radical change?
That's the critical question, isn't it? What pressures did that very stability create, both internally from a rapidly changing population and externally from global competition, that maybe paradoxically fueled such intense transformations? A fascinating dynamic. 2, the age of reform, navigating societal shifts.
It really is, because under that surface of stability and, imperial grandeur, there was this constant push, often really heated, for reform.
Absolutely necessary reforms in many cases.
Right. The Victorian age is often called the Age of Reform, and for good reason. A huge amount of legislation went through Parliament during Victoria's reign. Some really successful, some, fiercely resisted at first.
Lots of battles fought in Parliament.
These laws aimed at changing everything from the basic structure of Parliament itself to the everyday lives of working people. We can sort of group them into constitutional, political, economic, and social reforms.
That's a good way to categorize them.
And our sources really highlight that last category, social reform, specifically tackling what they called social problems or social abuses.
Which were often dire.
Dire is the word.
Yeah.
Often direct results of rapid population growth and this intense, often completely unregulated industrial capitalism, terrible living conditions, widespread poverty, horrific factory conditions.
Leading to things like public health acts.
Exactly, and crucial factory acts. Early factory reforms, for instance, were aimed squarely at the truly appalling working hours and dangerous conditions faced by children and women. At the start of the era, it was just shocking.
Almost unbelievable by today's standards.
Absolutely.
And when we talk about those key economic reforms, we absolutely have to get into one of the biggest, most bitterly fought legislative battles of the whole era. The repeal of the Corn Laws in 1846.
Ah, yes, the Corn Laws. Always comes up.
Because it was fundamental. To really get why it was such a big deal, you need to know what they were. Basically, a set of rules controlling grain imports and exports. Some version had been around for centuries, actually since the 12th century.
You went that far back.
Yeah, but they became politically explosive in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. Why? Population growth, mainly, and the Napoleonic Wars, which caused blockades and messed with grain supplies. These laws were essentially protectionist tariffs, designed to keep British grain prices artificially high by limiting cheaper foreign imports.
Which benefited who?
The wealthy landowners and farmers.
Yeah.
Massively protected their income.
Okay.
So the repeal in 1846 was seismic, a huge win for the rising manufacturing and industrial class.
Why was it so important for them?
Because their expansion, their profits, were being squeezed by the high cost of grain. It meant higher food prices for their workers, which pushed up wage demands, making British goods less competitive internationally.
Ah, okay. The knock-on effect.
Exactly. So the repeal was a direct, decisive victory for industrial interests against the powerful, entrenched landed aristocracy who'd benefited for ages. It fundamentally shifted the balance of power in the country away from the rural agricultural base towards the urban industrial one.
A major shift in social forces.
Absolutely. And what's really fascinating is how, despite all the fierce opposition leading up to it, people thought it might cause revolution within just a few years after it passed. That opposition just sort of melted away.
Really? Why?
Is how quickly the new economic reality took hold and reshaped things. The momentum was with industry. Now, about Queen Victoria's own views on all this. It's important we report impartially, based on what our sources say.
Right. What was her take?
She and Prince Albert actually supported the repeal of the Corn Laws in 46.
Oh, they did. Why?
Our sources suggest it was driven by a genuine desire to help relieve the terrible suffering in Ireland during the Great Famine, which is happening at the same time.
The famine connection.
Yes. However, and this is a crucial nuance, it's also noted that while they acknowledged the famine, their main focus, their active involvement, seemed much more directed toward things like building Osborne House, their big private estate.
Right, on the Isle of Wight.
And the complexities of foreign policy, rather than the ongoing human disaster in Ireland.
So a degree of detachment, maybe?
Perhaps. It highlights a complex aspect of royal engagement with crises, even with stated good intentions. And beyond that, Victoria generally held quite strong opposition to the demands of the Chartists.
The working class movement pushing for political reform.
Exactly. They wanted things like universal male suffrage. Our sources suggest Victoria believed that most workers in her kingdom were basically content and loyal.
Which might have underestimated the level of discontent.
Quite possibly. It maybe shows a disconnect from the realities faced by many. Her personal convictions were also very strong in other areas, especially religion.
Like what?
She strongly backed Benjamin Disraeli's Public Worship Regulation Act in 1874. This aimed to remove what she saw as Catholic rituals, things like elaborate vestments, incense from Anglican services.
Aligning with her more Protestant views.
Very much so. She personally preferred short, simple services and felt, apparently, a stronger connection to the Presbyterian Church of Scotland than the more hierarchical Church of England. And it was Disraeli again, her close political ally, who cleverly got the Royal Titles Act of 1876 through Parliament, officially making Victoria Empress of India.
Right, we mentioned that title earlier.
And it was proclaimed with huge fanfare at the Delhi Durbar on January 1st, 1877, a massive imperial show. This move, while obviously cementing imperial power, also subtly reaffirmed her Protestant faith in the Protestant identity of the British crown, especially in contrast to Catholic European monarchies.
So it's this mix of drivers: economic progress, some social concern, huge imperial ambition, strong religious beliefs.
All swirling together. Which raises a fascinating question for you listening. How did these reforms, often driven by such different, maybe even contradictory motives, end up shaping this complex, sometimes paradoxical, Victorian identity, an identity capable of both incredible progress and, well, some significant blind spots?
A reflection of industrial and social evolution.
That's a really sharp point about contradictory motives shaping identity, because those big societal and political shifts didn't just change laws. They profoundly changed something incredibly visible and personal, what people wore.
Absolutely. Fashion is a fantastic lens.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I think, because industrialization and all those rapid changes directly hit fashion. Not just how clothes were made, but what was stylish, what it said about you, and even who could afford certain looks.
Let's start with women's formal wear. It went through some truly dramatic changes, visibly mirroring that mix of innovation and, well, social restriction.
Like the crinoline, the giant hoop skirt.
Exactly, the iconic crinoline. That huge bell shape defined mid-Victorian fashion. But surprisingly, it started as a practical thing.
Practical? How?
It actually offered relief from wearing multiple layers of heavy starched petticoats, which was how they got volume before. The crinoline cage was lighter, airier.
Okay, I wouldn't have guessed practical.
Well, relatively speaking. But its sheer size and buoyancy meant a new undergarment became absolutely essential for modesty. Long cotton drawers, they became standard. As the 1860s wore on, the shape changed. It went from a perfect circle to more of an oval, with the fullness shifting towards the back.
Leading towards the bustle eventually.
Precisely. And this shape change affected skirt design, too. Instead of box pleats, you started seeing gored panels, which fit much more smoothly over the evolving frame. Streamlined the look a bit. Other practical things emerged, too. Bodices and skirts often became separate pieces.
Oh, mix and match.
Kind of. More flexibility, maybe using one skirt with different tops. And front closures became more common for bodices, a small thing, but it meant women could potentially dress themselves more easily.
Interesting. And industry played a role here.
Massively. The big game changer was the availability and affordability of domestic sewing machines.
The Singer Revolution.
Exactly. It led to this explosion in home dressmaking. Women could make more complex clothes faster. And this is when you see that characteristic Victorian love for copious trimmings. Tons of ribbons, lace, fringe, rosettes, intricate braid.
More is more.
Definitely. But after about 1867, those really huge crinoline cages started to disappear. Maybe just too impractical for city life.
Tripping hazard.
Probably. Skirts started to trail more, and the fullness was gathered up inside with ties or supported by smaller crinolets or bustle pads, creating volume just at the back, leading into that distinct bustle silhouette. A bit more natural, maybe, but still exaggerated.
Okay, let's shift to men's fashion. What was happening there?
An equally big evolution, actually. Moving towards a style that feels much more recognizably modern, more businesslike to us. Gentlemen's formal wear, by the mid-19th century, got noticeably more somber. Darker colors, less flamboyant shapes, a deliberate move away from earlier, more colorful styles.
Reflecting what? Seriousness? Respectability?
Both, I think. Especially with the rise of industry and finance, The three-piece suit jacket, vest, trousers really emerged in the 1860s.
The ancestor of today's suit.
Pretty much. It wasn't quite the standard business uniform yet, but it was clearly heading that way. A move towards standardization, functionality.
And what about older styles?
Interestingly, things that used to be everyday wear for stylish gentlemen, like the top hat, the fancy cravat, tight pantaloons, they gradually got reserved just for formal occasions. For daily life, more practical things took over, like the bowler hat and simpler neckties. Even trousers changed. The old fall front style gave way to the fly front we still use. Small, practical shifts.
Can you give a specific example of a stylish look?
Sure. The morning suit became quite the thing. Usually a matching tailored reefer jacket, short, close-fitting, often double-breasted with matching trousers and vest, often worn with an overcoat in, say, a bronze tan that was a popular color in the 1870s.
And the emphasis was on
Quality. Superb materials, fine wools, worsteds, and expert tailoring. It wasn't about being flashy, it was about conveying status and solidity through perfect fit and fabric. Understated elegance.
Now, you can't talk Victorian fashion without mentioning one name.
Charles Worth. Absolutely essential.
The father of haute couture.
A well-earned title. He really created the concept of designer-led, custom-fit, high dressmaking. He didn't just make clothes. He dominated the Paris fashion scene for the whole second half of the 19th century. He basically cemented Paris as the couture capital, and he changed the industry. Before Worth, clients told tailor dressmakers what they wanted. Worth pioneered the idea of the designer having a vision, creating collections under their own name, the fashion house model.
And royalty wore his clothes.
Oh, yes. The court painter Winterhalter painted loads of royals in Worth dresses. Think Empress Elizabeth of Austria-Sisi in that famous tulle ball gown. That was Worth. His dresses were status symbols, works of art.
Incredible. So, thinking about all this, how did these fashion changes from new materials thanks to industry to the rise of the celebrity designer? How did it all reflect the era's social ambitions and capabilities?
That's the core question. What does this shift from, say, the restrictive crinoline to the more functional suit tell us about changing gender roles, about ambition and the shock of the new? It's all woven into the fabric, quite literally.
Capturing reality in a scientific age.
Woven into the fabric. I like that. And it's a perfect link, because just as society and fashion were transforming, the art world was too, reflecting and reacting to all these huge shifts.
Very much so. Art doesn't happen in a vacuum.
The second half of the 19th century especially gets called the Positive Age. This period defined by this almost profound faith in science, in objective methods, the idea that science could solve pretty much anything.
A huge belief in progress through rationality?
Right, but it also got called other things, reflecting its complexity. The age of rationalism, yes, but also imperialism, science, and doubt, and the age of progress. All these forces kind of swirling together.
And they definitely shaped the dominant art philosophy of the time, realism.
Realism. What did that mean in practice?
Well, its goal was specific and quite revolutionary. It wasn't about copying the idealized art of the past, like earlier styles often did. Realism aimed for truthful, accurate, unvarnished depictions of models from nature and contemporary life.
So showing things as they really were.
Exactly. A deliberate rejection of the idealized, often dramatic or mythological subjects of Romanticism. It was tied into scientific ideas about vision, optics, how light actually works. And it also reflected a kind of democratic taste, rejecting the old hierarchies of subject matter mythology, grand history, and focusing instead on the everyday, sometimes gritty, reality of the present.
Okay, so where did this realism pop up?
Several places. In Paris, you had international artists developing new ways to paint, often directly influenced by science. Figures like John Singleton Copley, known for his realistic portraits, Gustave Courbet, the big leader of French realism, and Degas, with his amazing snapshots of Parisian life.
And wasn't there a group painting landscapes?
Yes, the Barbizon School.
Yeah.
Really important. French landscape artists, one of the first groups to deliberately work outside the official academy system. They went to the forest of Fontainebleau, near Barbizon village, to paint directly from nature, away from revolutionary Paris.
Getting back to nature.
Right. And they really helped establish landscape and scenes of country life as serious, important subjects in their own right, not just backgrounds for something else. Meanwhile, across the channel in Britain, you had the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood.
Ah, Rossetti, Milo.
Those guys. They banded together in 1848, a big year for revolutions in Europe. Their movement was a passionate reaction against what they saw as the boring, artificial historical paintings promoted by the Royal Academy. They wanted a new, moral seriousness, sincerity. They were inspired by Italian art from before Raphael the 14th, 15th centuries, admiring its detail and what they called its direct and uncomplicated depiction of nature, hence the name Pre-Raphaelite.
Going back to an earlier truth.
Sort of, yeah. And across the Atlantic, you had the Hudson River School from about 1825 to 1880, the first real American school of landscape painting. Their subject was the majestic scenery of the Hudson River Valley, capturing it with a sense of national pride and almost spiritual awe.
So realism took different forms in different places.
Definitely. But the underlying impulse was similar.
Let's talk about some of those key realist artists, especially the controversial ones. Gustave Courbet, you mentioned him as the leader in France.
Absolutely. Courbet was a rebel.
Yeah.
He deliberately rejected romanticism and chose everyday events, ordinary people, often working class, as his subjects.
And his paintings were often huge.
Monumental. Take the artist's studio from 1855. It's massive. A complex scene with figures from all walks of life, rich, poor, intellectuals, workers, and there's Courbet himself painting a landscape right in the middle of them all. It's like an allegory of his artistic world.
Powerful image.
Or his self-portrait, the desperate man, incredibly raw, emotional. It feels like he's showing you all the forces pulling it as an artist.
Then there was Daumier, more known for cartoons.
Hugely prolific caricaturist, yes, but also a painter and sculptor. His cartoons brilliantly satirized 19th century French politics and society. Nobody was safe.
Like political cartoons today?
But maybe even more biting. His painting Freedom of the Press is a strong statement. But Transanane Street, that one is chilling.
What does it show?
It's a lithograph depicting the aftermath of massacre. Soldiers stormed an apartment building after supposedly hearing a shot, and they killed everyone inside, men, women, children. Daumier shows the bloody reality. He forced people to confront the brutality of the time.
Unflinching.
Totally. And then there's Edouard Manet, another groundbreaker. He defied traditional ways of painting and chose contemporary subjects, often with his shocking directness.
Like Luncheon on the Grass.
Exactly. Le Déjeuner sur l'herbe, 1862-63. A large oil painting. You've got a nude woman and another scantily dressed woman casually picnicking with two fully dressed men in a park.
Which caused a huge scandal.
Massive. The official salon rejected it in 1863, so Manet showed it at the Salon de Refusé, the exhibition for rejected works, and it became infamous. The talk of Paris. People were outraged.
Why the outrage? Just the nudity.
Partly, but it was more that it wasn't mythological or historical nudity. It was contemporary people, recognizably modern in this strange, provocative scene. It broke the rules.
And then came Olympia, even more notorious.
Perhaps. First shown in 1865. It's a nude woman, Olympia, lying on a bed, staring right at the viewer. A black servant springing her flowers. There's a black cat.
And the scandal here.
Again, not just the nudity. It was her gaze, direct, confrontational, unashamed. And specific details, her name, a common name for courtesans. Her accessories made it clear she wasn't some goddess. She was a contemporary Parisian prostitute.
So confronting reality again.
Directly. It shattered the viewer's comfortable distance. You couldn't pretend she was just an ideal nude. She was real, modern, and looking right back at you.
Wow.
And the public reaction to paintings like these, it tells you so much.
About what?
About Victorian sensibilities. That deep tension between tradition and modernity. People weren't used to seeing raw, unidealized contemporary life, especially nudes, presented that way. Olympia's gaze, especially, implicated the viewer, forced a recognition of the present, not an escape into the past. These artists used their work to question everything: art, morals, society. They were part of that age of doubt, forcing people to confront uncomfortable truths. So think about this. What does that visceral outrage really reveal about the anxieties underneath the surface of Victorian society, even during all that progress? And how did these artists, through provocation, force a rethink of what art could even be?
Innovation and eclecticism.
That's a great question about art forcing a rethink. And it leads us nicely into the built environment itself, because the buildings people lived and worked in, the grand structures symbolizing their ambitions, they were also transforming massively.
Driven by industrialization again.
Exactly. New materials like cast iron, huge amounts of glass, new construction techniques. It opened up so many possibilities. Buildings got bigger, more complex.
And the styles. Incredibly diverse.
Oh, incredibly. Victorian architecture is known for drawing inspiration from all over history, often mixing them together in, well, sometimes surprising ways. Our sources list a real mix. Gothic Revival, Italianate, Stick style, East Lake, Queen Anne, Romanesque, Second Empire.
A whole menu of historical references.
It's quite a list, all falling under that big Victorian umbrella.
And maybe the defining trait is that rapid change of style. It wasn't just architects getting bored. It reflected real debates about aesthetics, what was the right way to build, happening alongside huge technological leaps.
So arguments about taste and new materials driving change.
Precisely. And you often see this love of ostentatious decoration, a desire to impress, plus that reliance on revival styles, that eclecticism pulling bits from here and there. The mixing itself became a hallmark, maybe reflecting a society figuring itself out amidst all the change.
Who are the key figures shaping this?
Several stand out. Charles Lockyer Eastlake, for example, an English architect and critic, he actually deplored some of the overly lavish Victorian designs he saw popping up.
He wasn't a fan of the excess.
Not always. He pushed for simpler, more honest forms, particularly favoring the Gothic themes he liked. He led a kind of counter-movement towards a more disciplined Gothic revival. Then you have Augustus Pugin, absolutely central to the Gothic revival.
The one obsessed with medieval Gothic.
Obsessed is maybe fair. The movement aimed to revive the spirit and principles of medieval Gothic. Pugin was the main force behind the archaeologically correct Gothic revival. He insisted on true principles, sticking closely to historical forms, honesty of materials, structural integrity. He believed good architecture made good people.
A moral dimension to building.
Very much so for Pugin. And over in France, you had Eugène Viollet-le-Duc, a leading architect, but his real genius was in restoration.
Restoring old buildings.
Yes, but controversially. He believed in restoring buildings not just as they were, but to an imagined original state of completion, sometimes adding bits based on his historical knowledge. Brilliant, but debated.
Okay, let's talk about some iconic buildings. The Crystal Palace has to be first, right?
Absolutely. The symbol of industrial innovation. Designed by Joseph Paxton for the Great Exhibition of 1851.
Made of iron and glass.
Almost entirely. Prefabricated iron frames and standardized glass panels assembled incredibly quickly. It was the largest glass building ever seen at the time. A transparent marvel showcasing British industry.
And it was temporary.
Yes. Later moved and eventually destroyed by fire. But its impact on architecture, demonstrating what prefabrication and new materials could do, was permanent.
Then there's Westminster Palace, the Houses of Parliament.
An enduring symbol. Rebuilt after a fire, it's this amazing collaboration between Sir Charles Barry, who did the overall plan, and Pugin, who did the incredibly intricate Gothic detailing.
So Pugin got his Gothic principles in there.
Oh, absolutely. It's prime perpendicular Gothic style, that late English Gothic with the strong vertical lines, huge windows, makes it look incredibly tall and light despite being massive, instantly recognizable with the Victoria Tower and Big Ben.
And Victoria lived there sometimes.
Our sources note it was also a royal residence, tying it to her reign, even as it became the heart of parliamentary power.
What about across the channel? Paris.
The Paris Opera House. The Palais Garnier.
Cool.
Designed by Charles Garnier. It's this incredibly ornate, eclectic building, seen as a symbol of Napoleon III's imperial regime, just dripping with decoration.
Like what?
Friezes, columns, winged figures, busts of composers, you name it. The inside is just as lavish, vibrant colors, gold everywhere, a massive central chandelier weighing over 6 tons, and the ceiling, famously painted much later by Chagall in 1964. Layer upon layer of opulence.
And the Eiffel Tower. That's Victorian era too, right?
Just squeaks in. Designed by Gustave Eiffel for the 1889 International Exhibition, celebrating 100 years since the French Revolution.
Made of iron.
An iron lattice tower, over 300 meters tall. Hugely controversial at first, many artists and writers thought it was hideous, an industrial eyesore.
But it became an icon.
A global icon, representing modernity, engineering skill, the sheer ambition of the age. A monument to new materials and technology reaching for the sky.
It's amazing how different these buildings are. Crystal Palace, Westminster, the Opera House, Eiffel Tower.
Exactly. And that diversity really captures the Victorian paradox, doesn't it? That pull between progress and nostalgia. You got architects pushing the limits of iron and glass, creating totally new forms. And at the same time, this deep yearning for historical styles like Gothic, seen as representing moral purity or tradition.
And the Opera House representing imperial showmanship.
Well, the Eiffel Tower is just raw, unapologetic industrial power. So think about this. How do these wildly different styles, often right next to each other, reflect the era's huge, sometimes conflicting ambitions and its incredible technological leaps? What does this eclectic mix tell us about the Victorian struggle to reconcile the past with the dazzling, sometimes scary, future?
6. Interior design, a labyrinth of lavish detail.
That's a great way to put it, reconciling the past with the future. Now let's step inside those buildings. What was daily life like within those walls? Let's talk interiors.
Right, moving from the facade to the lived experience. If Victorian interiors had a motto, maybe it was never trace a straight line, or more is definitely more.
Both could work. Our sources often describe the style as lavish, ostentatious, and yes, sometimes ugly, according to critics who wanted simplicity.
But the craftsmanship could be good.
Oh, absolutely. Especially the cabinet work for the wealthy. Beneath the visual clutter, the quality of materials and the skill involved could be truly remarkable. Dedication to craft.
So what did a typical mid-Victorian interior feel like?
Often described as confusing, heavy, and oppressive by those who didn't like it. There was just this deliberate abundance of pattern, texture, ornament, every surface decorated. A dense, layered look, very little empty space.
Were there different phases within the Victorian era?
Broadly, yes. You can sort of see an early Victorian style, maybe a bit more restrained, influenced by classicism. Then the mid-Victorian peak, that's the full-on maximalist, cluttered aesthetic. And then a third phase later on, maybe showing some simplification, leaning a bit towards Renaissance or Rococo influences, but still with a Victorian twist.
Okay, let's break it down. What were the key elements? Windows?
Heavy draperies. Really heavy, rich fabrics like velvet, brocade, and loaded with intricate details, fringes, tassels, elaborate pelmets on top. Not just decorative, also practical for warmth and privacy.
Flooring.
Carpets everywhere, lots of color, complex patterns, often from famous makers like Axminster or Wilton, or you might have polished wood floors, but they'd still be covered with loads of patterned rugs, layers of texture and warmth.
Walls and ceilings.
Texture and pattern were key here too. They used innovative materials like anaglypta, this embossed wallpaper that could mimic expensive letter in relief, and lincrusta, another embossed wall covering, very durable, allowed middle-class homes to get that opulent, textured look. Glass technology improved too, allowing for bigger windows, more light, especially in grander homes. And iron wasn't just for structure, it was used decoratively, especially for building conservatories attached to houses, bringing the garden indoors, very fashionable.
What are the layout of rooms? How was space used?
Interestingly, there was often a modulation of space, using things like columns or arches to visually divide areas without totally closing them off, creating a sense of flow but still allowing for separation.
In room height?
Ground floor rooms, especially for entertaining, were fashionably tall, added to the grandeur. The staircase hall was often a big dramatic feature too, a place for grand entrances, elaborate decoration, emphasizing height.
Did rooms have specific purposes?
Increasingly so, reflecting more specialized activities and a stricter division of life. You started seeing private stairs for parents to get to nurseries without going through public areas. Billiards rooms and smoking rooms, very male spaces became common from the mid-century.
So real stratification of space.
Definitely. Clear designation of spaces for women, men, children, reflecting the rigid social structures, gender roles, and emphasis on propriety. Everything had its place.
Can you give us some specific examples to help us picture it?
Sure. Imagine the drawing room ceiling at Cardiff Castle, late 1860s, 80s, vaulted, with delicate butterflies sculpted onto the ribs, whimsical detail amid the grandeur. Or the staircase hall at Harlaxton Manor, 1830s, incredibly theatrical, mixing Elizabethan, Jacobean, Baroque styles to maximize height and drama. The Elizabeth Salon at Belvoir Castle, finished 1825, already showing that Rococo influence with ornate curves and gilding. Or the music room at Harlaxton, more Baroque and Rococo mix.
What about collecting? Were interiors used to show off collections?
Absolutely. Look at the morning room at Waddesdon Manor, built for Baron de Rothschild. It was basically filled with original 18th century pieces from European palaces, all brought together, creating this incredibly opulent historical mix. Or think about ceilings. The hall ceiling at Presswold Hall, based on Raphael's Vatican designs showing Renaissance influence. Or the drawing room at Kelham Hall, combining medieval vaulting with classical details, that eclectic mix again. And for new materials, look at the National Library in Paris by Labrouste. Slender cast-iron columns supporting these amazing vaulted skylights, integrating industrial materials beautifully into a grand public space.
It's almost overwhelming just hearing about it.
It could be. So think about this. What does that often confusing, heavy, oppressive feel, combined with the specialized rooms and the strict separation of spaces? What does it tell us about Victorian social dynamics, their aspirations for status, privacy, maybe even control, and those contradictory senses of morality and propriety? It was a meticulously constructed world, inside and out.
Form, function, and opulence.
Meticulously constructed is right. And that leads us perfectly from the rooms themselves to the objects that filled them, the furniture. If the interiors were these layered coded spaces, the furniture was the tangible part of that code, what people actually used.
Exactly, the pieces they lived with daily.
And here's where it gets really interesting again, I think. Looking at the craftsmanship, the materials, the design ideas that made Victorian furniture so, well, Victorian.
Generally, yeah, our sources describe it as profusely ornamented, heavily carved, often really massive in scale.
Big and heavy.
Very, sometimes even seen as poorly proportioned by later critics, giving it this undeniable weight and grandeur, but maybe bordering on clumsy sometimes. But that bulk, that visual richness, was part of its appeal then. It communicated stability, wealth, permanence.
What about comfort and materials?
Comfort was definitely coming in. Overstuffed upholstery, deep tufting that became hugely popular, using rich, dark fabrics like velvet, brocade, even horsehair, creating this plush feel. For the wood itself, they loved rich, dark woods. Mahogany was a favorite, durable, lovely reddish tone. Oak for sturdiness. Walnut for its beautiful grain. Luxurious rosewood, too. Woods that could take intricate carving.
Was it all wood?
Not entirely. Cast iron was surprisingly popular, especially for lighter chairs, maybe garden furniture. Showed that embrace of mass production. Yeah. And papier-mâché sounds delicate, but it was strong used for chairs, small tables, often lacquered and decorated.
Papier-mâché furniture, wow.
Yeah. And mother of pearl was often used for inlay work, adding these shimmering details against the dark wood. Marble was huge for tabletops. Cool, elegant, durable. Even papier-mâché, treated right, was used for tabletops sometimes. Lots of material innovation.
And the design influences, where do they come from?
Everywhere. Victorian designers were master borrowers. They pulled elements from ancient Greece, from Louis XIV's Versailles, Elizabethan England, Gothic cathedrals, Louis XV's Rococo curves.
A historical mashup?
Pretty much, but not always faithful copies. They'd reinterpret, exaggerate, combine things to fit that Victorian taste for maximum ornament. The carving motifs reflected this: scrolls, flowers, leaves, classical figures, all adding layers of detail and meaning.
What about specific types of furniture that were really typical?
Chairs often had distinctive shapes, oval backs, horseshoe backs. Rocking chairs became incredibly popular, signaling more focus on home comfort.
Rocking chairs feel very Victorian.
They do. Chairs often had pronounced curves, lots of open-work carving on the crest rails. Upholstered chairs tended to have high backs and low curved legs. Interestingly, they were often designed to make you sit quite rigidly upright.
Not exactly lounge chairs, then.
Not always. Very proper. Examples include the balloon-back chair, Elizabethan Revival styles, those novelty papier-mâché chairs, and turn chairs that showed off intricate wood-turning skills.
What about sofas?
They evolved for social reasons, too. The conversation sofa, or tête-à-tête, often S-shaped, was designed specifically for two people to chat intimately, facing each other.
For discreet gossip.
Perhaps. Then the Chesterfield sofa became iconic, deep, fully upholstered, rolled arms the same height as the back, often in tufted leather. Classic, solid, comfortable. And there was the indiscreet, a couch for three, designed for specific social groupings.
And places to put things, all those Victorian knickknacks.
Ah, yes, the whatnot, or étagère. Light, elegant open shelves, either hanging or standing. Perfect for displaying all the ornaments, souvenirs, curiosities Victorians love to collect and show off. And tables, of course. Countless types, from general Victorian tables to specific shapes like the octagonal table, good for games or display.
Were there famous pieces?
Our sources mention things like carved walnut armchairs decorated with marquetry, that intricate wood inlay and set with porcelain plaques, maybe portraits of Victoria and Albert themselves, showing that blend of craft, art, and royal homage. And key makers. William Morris comes up again.
Not just architecture.
No, furniture too.
Yeah.
And textiles, printing. A key figure in the arts and crafts movement. He famously hated mechanization and wanted to revive traditional handcrafts as a reaction against industrial production. In America, John H. Bilter was famous, known for his innovative way of laminating wood in layers to create incredibly strong, curvy, ornate furniture, pushing the material's limits.
What about colors? What was the typical palette?
Dominant colors included rich creams like Devon cream, deep tobacco brown, earthy sage green, and a vibrant Pompeii red, often used together. These colors, plus the heavy fabrics and all the ornament, created that distinctive, rich, sometimes dark, deeply textured look.
Okay, final thought on furniture. How does all this, the massive scale, the heavy ornament, the eclectic styles, the new materials, the socially specific pieces, how does it speak to the era's desires? For comfort, status, connection to history, dealing with technology, what did these heavy, complex objects say about the people who owned them?
It's a fascinating question. They were certainly making a statement about wealth, taste, stability, their place in that rapidly changing world. The furniture wasn't just functional. It was part of their identity narrative.
Outro?
Oh, we have covered a lot of ground today. It really feels like we've journeyed through this incredibly dense, multi-layered period.
It was packed, wasn't it?
From Victoria's marathon reign, providing that strange bedrock for change, to those huge political and social shifts, the Corn Laws repeal, the whole age of reform idea. We looked at fashion crinolines to three-piece suits as this visible language of society. Then the art world, with realism challenging everything, showing life as it really was, warts and all.
Confronting reality.
And finally, stepping into the buildings themselves, that incredible architectural mix, Crystal Palace to Westminster. And then imagining being inside those lavish textured interiors surrounded by that massive ornate furniture.
It's a lot to take in. It really is. The Victorian age was just this time of immense change, industrial, social, political, artistic, all happening at once, all feeding into each other, and full of those paradoxes we talked about. Progress and tradition side by side, incredible wealth next to grinding poverty, scientific faith bumping up against intense moral seriousness.
It certainly wasn't simple.
No. So this deep dive, I hope it leaves you, our listener, with a question to chew on.
Go on.
The Victorian age wasn't just some dusty historical period. It was, as you said, foundational. It laid so much of the groundwork for the world we live in now.
Absolutely. The echoes are everywhere.
So the final provocative thought is this. Think about our world today. Our consumer culture, the design of our cities, our buildings, our home. Think about our ongoing debates about social justice, our art, our media. What aspects of our current society, our daily lives, our culture can you now trace directly back to the principles, the innovations, the technologies, even the unresolved arguments and anxieties that first emerged during Queen Victoria's long, complicated, and utterly transformative reign? Where do you see the Victorian legacy still shaping your world?